I'm about to show you how a quiet engineer built a $92 billion empire without hype, without headlines, no LinkedIn posts, and with over 600 tiny software deals. Most people have never even heard his name. But if you want to buy a business a smart way, this is the playbook. Hi, I'm John Stoddard from dealflowsystem.net. I've helped buyers close $33 million in deals and raise $50 million in funding. If you're working full time and want to avoid those junk deals, you should hit that subscribe button and watch this show. All right, let's rewind to Toronto, 1995. Snow drifts past the windows of a modest office near King Street. Inside, a former venture capitalist named Mark Leonard sits at a desk piled with reports. He's left the world of Silicon Valley hype behind. The venture firms he knew chased bright startups. They burned cash. They prayed for 10 baggers. Leonard saw something else. Across North America, thousands of tiny software companies are running the hidden machinery of everyday life. Library systems, billing for marinas, scheduling for hospitals, parking ticket management. They're not flashy. They're not growing 100% a year, but they're profitable, and almost nobody is buying them. Leonard is about to do something no one expects. He will quietly acquire these companies, one by one, and hold them forever. That decision will produce one of the greatest compounding machines of all time. Mark Leonard was born in 1955 and trained as an electrical engineer before earning an MBA. He moved into venture capital during the 1980s. At first, it seemed glamorous, backing innovative tech startups. But he became disillusioned. He saw the founders raising too much money. He saw investors chasing fads and narratives. He saw a forgotten world of vertical market software businesses, small firms selling indispensable programs to niche industries. Most of these companies had steady cash flow, loyal customers, and no obvious buyers. They were the antithesis of the VC model. And Mark Leonard thought, what if someone simply bought them and held them forever? Now picture Leonard at this same desk in Toronto. Outside, dot-com mania is rising. And inside, he's writing a plan for a company that will do the opposite of what everyone else is doing. He calls it Constellation Software. The name hints at the vision. Hundreds of small stars forming a vast system. Instead of taking a minority stake and flipping, he will acquire entire companies outright. Instead of forcing integration, he will leave them autonomous. Instead of chasing growth, he will chase cash returns above a hurdle rate. What exactly are these companies he wants to buy? They're called vertical market software, or VMS. Imagine software built not for everyone, but for a single industry. A marina billing company, a hospital scheduling system, a library fine tracker. These programs are so embedded in the customer daily operations that switching is painful. That makes revenue sticky and predictable. If you've ever wondered where to find durable software businesses, this is it. Mission critical, low competition, and ignored by the mainstream. Mark Leonard raises about 25 million Canadian dollars in 1995. He recruits a small team. Together, they begin identifying small software firms that meet three criteria. Number one, recurring revenue. Two, essential to customers. And three, capable management willing to stay. At first, the deals are tiny. A few $1 million here, a few $1 million there. But Mark Leonard isn't chasing size. He's building a process. Think of this as forging a sword rather than swinging it. No one has ever tried to create a holding company of small, boring software firms. Investors think it's a folly, but Mark Leonard crosses anyway. He knows that if you can buy these companies cheaply and hold them forever, the cash flow will compound. He knows autonomy will keep the founders motivated. And he knows secrecy will keep competitors away. This is the blueprint you don't see in real time. You only see it after 20 years of results. So let's zoom out. The mid-1990s are dominated by Microsoft, Oracle, and the rise of the internet. Every headline is about a massive horizontal platforms. Meanwhile, in small offices across Canada, Constellation is buying little pieces of the economy no one else sees. Municipal billing systems, school lunch accounting, fleet management. Each acquisition becomes another star in the constellation. As the first dozen acquisitions settle in, Mark Leonard notices a problem. He can't run them all from a single office. So he creates operating groups. Think of these as mini holding companies. Each operating group manages dozens of business units. Every new acquisition becomes its own business unit. This is decentralization. Instead of micromanaging, Mark Leonard gives autonomy but enforces a hurdle rate, a minimum acceptable return. This allows Constellation to scale without bloated headquarters. Mark Leonard's hurdle rate is the minimum return a deal must produce to be worth doing. Historically, it's around 20% or higher. If the deal can't clear it, Constellation walks away. This is discipline in action. For a first-time buyer, setting a hurdle rate is like setting guardrails on a mountain road. It keeps you from going over the cliff when emotions run high. By the late 1990s, Constellation has a handful of acquisitions under its belt. But the real test is coming. In a few years, Mark Leonard will take this company public. Skeptics will question the model. Competitors will try to copy it. Will decentralization hold up? Will small acquisitions produce results? Imagine Mark in his dimly lit office. He's drafting his first shareholder letter. He writes about the need for autonomy, frugality, and raising the hurdle rate as competition increases. He says, "We're building a company designed to last. Our aim is to buy businesses we can hold forever, not flip. Our goal is to give managers autonomy while holding them accountable to returns on capital." These shareholder letters become the closest thing to a public window into his mind. Mark Leonard's approach appeals to founders. He's not a private equity buyer who will strip cost and flip in 5 years. He's a long-term steward who will leave their culture intact. This makes owners more willing to sell, and sometimes at better prices. By 2000, Constellation Software has a small but growing portfolio. Each business unit is autonomous. Operating groups share best practices but aren't forced into one mold. Think of it as a living ecosystem. New stars added each year. You can notice how Mark Leonard's model differs from a roll-up. A roll-up consolidates and homogenizes. Mark Leonard decentralizes and diversifies. One approach produces fragility. One produces resilience. If you're contemplating multiple acquisitions, that's the lesson worth remembering. As the decade ends, Constellation Software stands on the edge of a new era. It has proven the concept of buying small VMS companies. Now it will test the model on a public stage. an IPO, larger acquisitions, a database of tens of thousands of targets, and the world will slowly begin to notice. This is where our story turns from experiment to empire. The year is 2006. Constellation Software has been quietly acquiring vertical market software companies for over a decade. Now, for the first time, it's stepping onto the public stage. It's filing to go public on the Toronto Stock Exchange. Most analysts don't know what to make of it. The company is a patchwork of tiny, obscure software outfits. It has no brand, no single flagship product, and yet it's profitable and growing. Investors mutter that it's overvalued. They don't see the machine beneath the surface. While Wall Street focuses on quarterly earnings, Constellation Software is building something far more durable, a database of potential acquisitions. By 2006, it already knows thousands of vertical market targets. Each target is logged with revenue, profit, market position, and contact history. This is Constellation Software's secret weapon, a living map of the vertical software landscape. Think of it as a metal detector scanning a beach few others even know about. For the first-time buyer, this is your cue to start building your own pipeline. And even if you don't buy today, log the lead, build a habit of tracking and ranking potential leads. Inside Constellation Software, the Harris Computer Operating Group has become a microcosm of the larger company. Harris Computer focuses on municipal and utility software, billing systems, permit management, and public safety. Each acquisition Harris makes becomes a standalone business unit. Managers are given autonomy to run their own operations, but they're also plugged into a quiet network of other Harris units, sharing best practices, financial metrics, and lessons learned. It's a federation, not a dictatorship. When you buy your first business, you may think in terms of single P&L. But Mark Leonard's model hints at something larger, a network you can grow over time. Across the Atlantic, Constellation Software sees opportunity. In the Netherlands, a company called Topicus shares the same DNA as Harris. It specializes in education, healthcare, and finance software for European markets. Constellation Software spins off Topicus as a separately listed entity but keeps control. It's the same model. Local teams, local deals, same hurdle rate. This is the Constellation Software playbook at continental scale. When Constellation Software evaluates a deal, it runs a simple test. Will this acquisition produce at least 20% internal rate of return? If yes, greenlight it. If no, walk away. This sounds easy until you're the one passing on a deal that's almost there. But Mark Leonard enforces it. By raising the hurdle rate as competition heats up, Constellation Software keeps its discipline intact. In 2008, Mark Leonard paraphrased, "We're not looking to beat the market every quarter. We're looking to compound for decades. We'll pass on details that don't meet our standards, even if they're tempting." These words aren't marketing slogans. They're operating principles. Even as Constellation Software grows, Mark Leonard stays out of the spotlight. He does no keynote speeches. He doesn't do press tours. He knows attention brings competition and inflated valuations. Secrecy also keeps employees focused internally. They measure themselves against internal benchmarks, not external praise. Mark Leonard runs Constellation with a tiny headquarters staff. No lavish campus, no flashy perks. Resources flow to the operating units, not to corporate overhead. He writes about spending $500 on a used desk rather on $5,000 on a new one. Frugality isn't a gimmick, it's culture. This frugality reinforces discipline in acquisitions. With each passing year, Constellation decentralized model hardens. Operating groups like mini constellations themselves. They identify, evaluate, and acquire companies without waiting for head office approval. This autonomy means deals can happen quickly, sometimes within weeks of first contact. It also means managers feel like owners. Mark Leonard often writes about the behavioral side of investing. The biggest risk isn't the numbers, it's overconfidence, herd mentality, and ego. Constellation Software builds systems to counteract these biases. Clear hurdle rates, data-driven evaluations, autonomy with accountability. This behavioral edge becomes a hidden moat. Despite skepticism, Constellation Software's stock begins to rise. Year after year, it posts steady cash flow and reinvests it into more acquisitions. Investors start to take notice. But Mark Leonard remains invisible. No interviews, no analyst calls beyond the minimum. He's playing a decades-long game. By 2010, Constellation Software database of targets surpasses 40,000 companies. Every deal closed adds intelligence to the system. Pricing, margins, growth rates, key contacts. This data advantage makes future deals easier and cheaper. It's like owning a private map of hidden treasure. In a world obsessed with speed, Mark Leonard's model is about patience. Decades, not quarters. Each acquisition is small, but the compounding effect is massive over time. This is the quiet power of persistent execution. If you're contemplating your first acquisition, you don't have to replicate Constellation Software. You can borrow its DNA. Start by thinking in decades. Build a pipeline of potential targets, even if you're not ready to buy. Make autonomy and discipline part of your culture from day one. By the early 2010s, Constellation Software has proven the model. Hundreds of acquisitions, rising stock price, a culture of autonomy and discipline. But the company still flies under the radar. Inside Constellation Software, Mark Leonard is refining the model. He's asking deeper questions about capital allocation. How high should the hurdle rate go? How should operating groups evaluate deals independently? By 2013, Constellation Software's hurdle rate for small acquisitions is well above 20%, sometimes higher depending on market conditions. It's a simple rule, but a ruthless one. Passing on a deal at 24.8% IRR when the hurdle rate is 25 seems trivial until you compound that discipline over hundreds of deals. This discipline acts like a governor of a powerful engine. It keeps Constellation Software from racing off the road. It also filters for very best opportunities, even when competitors appear. Managers at operating groups understand this rule. They run their own numbers, submit the deals, and live or die by the hurdle. It's not bureaucracy, it's a culture of owner-operators. Picture an operating group head in Europe. She finds a niche healthcare software company serving as a small but loyal customer base. She negotiates directly with founders, structures the deal, and closes it. Headquarters doesn't micromanagers. They only ask, will it clear the hurdle? Will it preserve culture? Will it compound cash? The autonomy allows Constellation Software to make dozens of acquisitions per quarter without bottlenecks. By now, Constellation Software resembles an empire of miniature kingdoms. Each kingdom has its own leaders, products, and customers, but all share a common currency: discipline, and data. It's like a constellation of stars linked by invisible gravity. Meanwhile, the acquisition database has grown to more than 40,000 targets. Every new deal adds intelligence: price paid, returns achieved, churn rates. This living archive becomes a strategic moat. Competitors can copy the idea of buying a VMS companies, but they can't copy 15 years of proprietary data on how these companies perform. Mark Leonard himself becomes even more elusive. By 2017, he stops writing shareholder letters entirely. No public appearances, no interviews. To outside, Constellation Software is a black box with a rising stock price. Inside, it's a hive of disciplined activity. Dozens of operating groups, hundreds of managers, thousands of developers. This secrecy serves multiple purposes. It prevents bidding wars. It keeps staff focused. It protects the advantage built over decades. Each acquisition adds not just revenue, but culture. Operators share best practices across groups, accounting methods, customer retention tactics, pricing experiments. Knowledge diffuses quietly. We do not seek to centralize. We seek to share what works. This memo sums up the company's ethos. By the mid-2010, Constellation Software is active in Europe, North America, and beginning to eye other regions. Topicus spins off a separately listed entity in the Netherlands, but keeps the Constellation DNA. Operating groups adapt to local laws and norms, but keep the hurdle rates disciplined. This combination, local autonomy, global standards, allows Constellation Software to expand without diluting its model. Think of Constellation Software not as a corporation, but as a living organism. Cells divide and replicate. Each new acquisition strengthens the organism's ability to find and integrate more. Mark Leonard's role shifts from dealmaker to architect of systems. By late 2010 into the 2020s, friends and former colleagues describe Mark Leonard as analytical, introverted, and intensely curious. He reads widely. He distrusts hype. He prefers data to narrative. He's also frugal and patient. A small headquarters staff, modest compensation structures. He incentivizes executives with stock and cash tied to performance, not promises of exits. This personality permeates the company. In one internal note, paraphrased, "Capital is precious. We allocate it to the highest return opportunities. We spend little on ourselves." This isn't just talk. It's visible in the way Constellation Software avoids flashy offices or marketing campaigns. By now, Constellation Software has weathered multiple market cycles. It's raised its hurdle rate in frothy times and lowered it when bargains appear. The counter-cyclical discipline compounds advantage. Many acquirers become sloppy as they scale. Mark Leonard doubles down on discipline. If you're buying your first business, you won't have Constellation scale. But if you could have the mindset, start small, set clear rules, and stick to them. Over time, your small portfolio can become a micro constellation. Despite the scale, Mark Leonard remains almost a ghost. Few photos exist, few interviews. His absence from public eye becomes part of the company's mystique. In an age of personal brand, Mark Leonard cultivates no brand at all. Yet Constellation Software stock quietly compounds. By late 2010, its market cap crossed tens of billions. Annualized returns since IPO top 30%. More than 600 acquisitions completed. Hundreds of niche vertical markets entered. The experiment has now become a silent empire. Mark Leonard shows that extraordinary results can come from ordinary businesses, not by flipping them, not by centralizing them, but by respecting their uniqueness and compounding their cash flows. For the first-time buyer, this is a quiet reminder. You don't need to buy flashy. You need to buy enduring. By the start of the 2020s, Constellation Software has achieved something almost no one thought possible. It has grown from 25 million in Canadian dollars experiment into a Canadian $90 billion giant. Over 600 acquisitions, tens of thousands of employees, and yet most people still couldn't name it. In an age of instant credibility, Mark Leonard remains a ghost. No press tours, no social media, not even the shareholder letters that once gave a glimpse of his thinking. Imagine a galaxy of stars across a night sky. Each star is a small software company serving a vertical market. Libraries, marinas, school lunch billing, utilities. Together they form Constellation Software. But unlike traditional conglomerate, each star shines on its own. As private equity firms and strategic buyers crowd into vertical software, valuations rise. Mark Leonard responds by the way he always has, by raising the hurdle rate. If competitors want to overpay, let them. Constellation Software will wait for bargains or create its own. This counter-cyclical patience becomes more valuable the larger the empire grows. At 600 plus acquisitions, most corporations would be drowning in bureaucracy. But Constellation's decentralization actually strengthens the size. Operating groups have become mini constellations, each with their own acquisition teams, culture, and internal benchmarks. Headquarters remain small, a quiet capital allocator. This structure prevents bottlenecks and empowers operators. It allows the company to keep expanding into ever smaller niches without losing efficiency. By now, Constellation Software is truly global. Operating groups scout deals in Europe, the UK, Australia, and even emerging markets. Topicus thrives in the Netherlands. Harris expands into municipal software categories. This geographic spread echoes the original insight. There are thousands of overlooked vertical markets worldwide, each waiting for a disciplined buyer. Inside Constellation Software, knowledge travels laterally. Managers compare metrics, share playbooks, and swap ideas across operating groups. But there's no forced integration. There's no one Constellation way of doing everything. This balance, sharing without imposing, is rare. It's part of why operators stay. Mark Leonard himself remains intensely private but curious. He reads widely, studies history, and keeps refining his mental models. He prefers to ask questions rather than issue orders. He hires people who think like owners. This personality filters down. Constellation Software attracts managers who value autonomy, data, and stewardship over flash. Even at $90 billion, headquarters staff is lean. Budgets for travel, offices, and perks remain modest. Capital is allocated with care. Bonuses are tied to cash flow and stock purchases, not vague metrics. The frugality frees more capital for acquisition and signals to sellers that Constellation Software is a steady steward. By now, the acquisition database spans decades. It holds not just targets, but post-acquisition results. Churn, growth, profitability. This institutional memory lets Constellation Software spot patterns invisible to competitors. It also trains new acquisition teams faster, reducing mistakes. In effect, Mark Leonard has built not just a holding company, but a compounding knowledge engine. Private equity firms have noticed. They're trying to buy the same kinds of companies. Some succeed in the short term, but struggle to replicate Constellation Software's culture. They centralize, integrate, and lose the trust of operators. Constellation Software watches quietly, sticking to its principles. For the first-time SMB buyer, Constellation Software's scale might seem unreachable, but the scale is the result, not the starting point. Mark Leonard began with small deals, patient capital, and a philosophy of stewardship. That's replicable. The question to ask isn't, how can I buy 600 companies, but how can I build systems and discipline into my first one? Even as the company becomes a global benchmark, Mark Leonard remains absent from the limelight. Few photos, no conferences, no TED Talks. His absence becomes part of the story, a living contrast to celebrity CEOs. It also signals something deeper. The focus is on the companies, not on the man. At this stage, Constellation Software's mode is no longer just data or discipline, it's culture. A culture of autonomy, frugality, and long-term thinking is hard to copy. You can buy software companies, but you can't buy a 25-year culture of decentralized stewardship. This is why Constellation Software continues to grow while competitors stall. Even as the valuations rise, Constellation Software keeps compounding. It invests in internal training, succession planning, and new acquisition teams. Each operating group becomes a training ground for the next generation of capital allocators. This is how Mark Leonard ensures the model will outlive him. Think of Mark Leonard less as a CEO and more of a steward of a forest. He plants the trees, lets them grow, prunes occasionally, but never clear cuts. He understands compounding in a biological sense. Small growth repeated over long time frames. You don't need to imitate Constellation Software size to benefit from its principles. You can imitate its patience, discipline, and respect for operators. You can also build your own small database of deals and contacts. That's your Constellation Software in miniature. As the 2020s progress, Mark Leonard has effectively withdrawn from public view, but his creation continues to grow. We're approaching the moment in the journey where the hero's impact becomes legacy. The empire is mature, the model is proven. Now the question becomes, what will this mean for the next generation of acquirers? The legacy in return with the elixir. It's the mid-2020s. Constellation Software has become one of the most remarkable business stories of our time. From 25 million seed in 1995 to a $92 billion silent empire today. 600 acquisitions, 30 years of compounding. And yet, most people still don't know Mark Leonard's name. Mark Leonard's anonymity is almost unthinkable, but it's also the point. Across the acquisition world, Mark Leonard's fingerprints are everywhere. Private equity firms study Constellation Software's model, hoping to mimic its returns. Founders of niche software companies reference it when they think about succession. And in small offices from Calgary to Copenhagen, managers who sold their companies to Constellation Software are still running them today, often happier than before. This isn't the typical roll-up. It's a stewardship model that lets businesses live on. Though Mark Leonard stopped writing public letters in 2017, the old ones circulate like underground manifestos. They emphasize autonomy, discipline, and the dignity of operators. He writes of buy and hold as a moral position, not just a financial one, and of decentralization as a way to scale without crushing creativity. This philosophy quietly spreads beyond Constellation Software, influencing small investors and first-time buyers alike. Inspired by Mark Leonard's model, a new generation of acquirers starts building the micro-constellations, small holding companies buying niche businesses and letting them run autonomously. Some focus on home services, some on healthcare, logistics, or industrial software. They're not copying Constellation size, they're copying its principles. Mark Leonard's career reframes what it means to own a business. Instead of a trophy asset or a quick flip, ownership becomes stewardship. He treats each acquisition like a living organism. Cash flow is reinvested, not extracted. Over time, this creates more wealth than any single exit could. Inside Constellation Software, The heroes aren't the deal makers at headquarters. They're the operators running hundreds of small businesses day to day. This inversion, celebrating the operators, creates loyalty and stability. For SMB first-time buyers, this is a reminder. Keep your key people. Empower them. Make them heroes. By now, Constellation Software's cultural moat is so deep that competitors struggle to poach managers or copy its systems. It's not just data or hurdle rates. It's shared ethos of autonomy, frugality, and patience. This culture is invisible on a balance sheet but priceless in practice. Mark Leonard himself has become wealthy beyond imagining, but he lives quietly without fanfare. His wealth is not just personal but institutional. Thousands of employees with stable careers, thousands of customers with supported software, thousands of communities with better infrastructure. This is wealth as resilience, not spectacle. Like a hero returning from a long journey, Mark Leonard has brought back an elixir for others. It's not a secret formula. It's a set of principles anyone can apply. Buy enduring businesses in overlooked niches. Hold them long-term and reinvest the cash flow. Decentralize but measure rigorously. Set hard hurdle rates and honor them. Stay frugal, stay quiet, stay curious. This is the inheritance of Constellation Software offers to the next generation of acquirers. If you're watching this because you dream of buying your first business, let this story reassure you. You don't need to be a celebrity CEO brand. You don't need $1 billion. You need patience, discipline, and a willingness to look where others aren't looking. Leonard started with small deals. So can you. Imagine a massive constellation of stars in the night sky. Somewhere at the center, an architect moves quietly, adjusting the orbit now and then. That's Mark Leonard today. He's still on board, still guiding capital allocation, and still invisible. And yet his silent empire continues to grow. Mark Leonard's story shows the power of ignoring hype and focusing on fundamentals. In software, as in life, the boring stuff often matters most. He built a company that treats small businesses with dignity, not as expendable units. That's a model we're studying, not just for returns, but for resilience. As Constellation Software thrives, it influences suppliers, customers, and even governments. Municipalities using its software have continuity and support. Employees at acquired companies gain stability and a network of peers. This ripple effect is the quiet side of acquisition, the side rarely known in the headlines. In a decade where tech cycles shorten and investors demand instant growth, Mark Leonard's model stands apart. It rewards patience, data, and stewardship. And it delivers something more valuable than quick win, a compounding machine that endures. Mark Leonard's elixir is a way of thinking about acquisitions. Small niches, long holding periods, disciplined returns, empowered operators. It's not glamorous, but it works. And it can guide you through your own journey, whether you buy one business or many. And as we approach the present day, Constellation Software stands as a mature, silent empire. Mark Leonard's public appearances remain rare, but the principles he refined over 3 decades are now baked into an organization designed to last beyond him. Constellation Software spans hundreds of companies, thousands of employees, and billions in revenue. Its market values hovers around $92 billion. It has no big brand, no flashy headquarters, no celebrity CEO. Yet it may be one of the most successful acquiring businesses in history. Mark Leonard himself remains largely unseen. Few photos, fewer interviews. He is, as ever, the ghost at the center of the constellation. Even now, Constellation Software continues to acquire. Each year, dozens of new companies join the field. Each one is a small star, quietly burning cash flow into the larger system. The structure is self-reinforcing. Operating groups run their own acquisitions, train their own managers, and add to the database. It's a compounding machine designed to survive its founder. Mark Leonard's personal presence in day-to-day operations has diminished. He has built a system that no longer depends on him. This is the mark of a true architect, when the structure stands without the builder. For anyone building a business, this is the final milestone. Look closer at Constellation Software's impact. It's not just the market cap. It's thousands of small businesses preserved, thousands of customers supported, thousands of jobs stabilized. In an era of disruptive exits and stripped assets, Mark Leonard built a company that sustains and develops. This is a different type of wealth creation. Slower, quieter, but deeply rooted. Why does it work? Because it's not built on hype or a single product. It's built on autonomy, discipline, and reinvestment. These principles survive leadership changes, market cycles, and geographic expansion. They're principles you can apply at any scale. Consider the time horizon. Leonard started Constellation Software in 1995. Many of today's tech darlings weren't even founded then. Over 30 years, Constellation Software compounded steadily, rarely making headlines but always adding another small star. This is patience as strategy. Mark Leonard's early letters still circulate among students of business. They're studied for their clarity, humility, and insistence on autonomy. His later silence is studied too, as an intentional strategy. He chose to step out of the spotlight so the company could outgrow him. Because Mark Leonard is so private, myths have grown around him. Some imagine a reclusive genius at a computer, others a philosopher king. In reality, he is an engineer with a passion for systems and a gift for capital allocation. He built his company like an engineer builds a bridge, calculating load, stress, and longevity. Mark Leonard never wrote a business book or hosted a masterclass. He let the results speak. But the lessons are there for anyone willing to look. Buy durable businesses. Empower operators. Reinvest cash flow. Stay disciplined. Avoid the spotlight. If you're watching this as a first-time buyer, the takeaway is simple but profound. You don't need scale, you need principles. Mark Leonard began with small acquisitions nobody else wanted. He applied discipline, autonomy, and patience. Over decades, that became an empire. In the hero's journey, the final stage is the return with the elixir. The hero brings back wisdom to the community. Mark Leonard's elixir is not a secret technique. It's a mindset. Stewardship over speculation, patience over hype. He showed that you can build enormous value by honoring the small and overlooked. Picture a night sky over Toronto. Stars glitter in quiet patterns. Each star represents a business you've never heard of, but someone depends on it every day. In the center of that sky sits an invisible architect. He doesn't see the light, he builds the map. This is Constellation Software. Think about what this means in a world obsessed with the next big thing. You can create extraordinary outcomes by focusing on the enduring rather than the trendy. You can be an owner-steward rather than a flipper. You can build your own constellation one business at a time. Mark Leonard's story is about more than software. It's about a way of thinking that respects time, capital, and people. That's why it resonates far beyond Canada, far beyond tech, far beyond investing. It's why we're telling the story today. If you found this story useful, smash that subscribe button. And if you're serious about buying your first business, I can help. Head over to dealflowsystem.net. That's where I show you how to find, fund, and close your first deal the smart way. I'm John Stoddard. Thank you for joining me on this journey.